Chair, Mr. Hemant Kumar, Director Actuarial, Principal Global Services, India. Welcome, Hemant. And to share their thoughts, can I please invite our panelist, Ms. Kalpana Shah, President, IFoA UK. Welcome, Kalpana. Ms. Kendra Felisky, Vice President International, CAS US. And Mr. Avnish Nainawatee, Director, Actuarial Investments, MNG PLC, India Limited. The session is yours.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session. Thanks for taking time, and welcome my esteemed panelists again. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to Institute of Actuaries of India, Mayur, who called me for this session, for giving this opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to be sharing stage with my esteemed panelists. All right, so it's a shift from Rasgulla and some desserts and kadai paneer to this session. We'll keep it a little light on content, right? So the session is around the skills framework in remote working as we are moving into this kind of work. So when COVID came, everything changed from customer expectations, employee expectations, and that's where even organizations, they have changed the way they work. And remote or mix of remote and office, which is hybrid, this is the flavor these days. And most of the organizations, they have taken some form of flexibility in the work that we do. So a quick time check on this, that this session would be 30 minutes. So we'll be really jumping on to the first question. So maybe, Avnish, I can ask you the first question around, what are the skills do you think we really need when we move into this increasingly flexible or hybrid work mode?
Thank you so much. Really, I mean, I'm thinking about remote working. I think that's a topic which we've been discussing from past 3 years. In fact, people would be very much familiar with what to go for. But I feel there is some subtle way of sort of shaping what we are trying to do, and also try to just present a very quick example as well. I feel there are 3 areas, 3 strong pillars that we need to look at. The first one would be your technical proficiency. Effectively, how do you sort of reshape your mind to work in a remote environment, have right set of skills, right set of tools by which you can collaborate. Second, it would be more about your communication style. So how do you sort of modify your communication style, whether it's your video calls, emails, written communication, such that you can still generate a lot of ideas, which is one of the big blockers people say working remote. And third, I would say more of a self-management. And how do you sort of see yourself working in a remote environment as somebody who's owning things and delivering things. So if I have a team, okay, who's working on, say, cross-platform project, which is one of the big challenges working in a remote area, we have some data analysts or data scientists working out of Gurgaon. We have some actuaries working out of Mumbai, and some data scientists and actuaries working out of London. What I would expect them, each one of them, to have a very strong understanding of what are good tools they can use, such that they can exchange ideas, and they can have that productive discussion, which is very much relevant in a face-to-face conversation. I don't know, different organizations have whiteboards, Miro, I mean, different set of ways by which they can share, collaborate on the ideas itself. So if that team is giving those directions, coming up with solution, platforming, discussions, that could be a very good way and good option. Second part about the communication style itself. I mean, there are so many confusions which happen when you're doing certain development, certain product launches where there was no clear set of expectations in terms of what is ownership of each team member, how they have been going ahead, and when do we have those connect points. So having that discipline, that we do have those regular connect points, irrespective where you are working remotely or whether you're working face-to-face. Also respecting individuals. I think that makes a huge difference, because once you respect that individual, you end up developing a personal connect. And once you start developing that personal connect and treating that individual just another team member, you try to be actually as understanding as you could be in terms of what you're doing. I think the last part of the self-management is how do you take an ownership of a particular delivery? So in this cross-functional team, there will be some understanding, requirement, and expectation from an actuary. that they should be able to appreciate the challenges what a data scientist might be facing for a particular objective. And I feel that if you are not, I would say, having a right emotional, okay, as well as technical, as well as, ability to understand somebody and their perspective, just walk in their shoes, it will be very, very difficult to collaborate. And I feel, if you amalgamate all of these three pillars together, you can be as effective as working, remote, as working face-to-face, and you get access to brilliant talent. You get individuals who have never been in a part of a scale coming and joining you. So I think that's a very positive outcome.
Thank you, Avnish. So having heard from an industry leader, now I jump to the heads of actuarial bodies. So what do you think, maybe Kendra, you can start here. What do you think are the skills, if you want to weigh in on what Avnish has said, that are needed for remote work as we get into this newer way of working?
Can you hear me now? There we go. Okay, so it's hard to add much to what it already said. But what I think the most important thing is about remaining engaged or becoming more engaged with the organization, because you're going to have to create new pathways in order to do that. And if you don't do that, it's going to make it much harder to become an actuary and develop your actuarial judgment. Now, let's face it. I mean, we're actuaries. We're sitting in this room. We're probably more on the introverted side than the extroverted side, I would suggest. So that's going to be a little bit outside of our comfort zone. So in the old days, when you were sitting in the office and you could hear the conversations that were happening around you, or you could see that two members of your project team are meeting over there, you can go over and join in the discussion. That's just going to be much harder to do. So you're going to need to come out of your comfort zone when you're sitting at home doing your work, and you're going to need to be able to have those connections that you can make, whether it's sending messages or doing a quick call or things that you can check in and you can continue to find out what's going on. Because the worst thing to do is to sit there and have a problem and then try to figure it out yourself and not know who to go to get the answers from. So the best and most important skill, I think, is make sure you have your connections to communicate.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Kendra. Kalpana. Yeah.
Thank you. And the beauty of going last is that they've already said it all. So I get the freedom of taking off my IFoA hat for a second and just giving you my broader experience as a board director. And many of you early in your career will be looking at how do I communicate up as well and in other meetings. So what I would say to you is, I don't know if you've heard of FOMO, fear of missing out, and just really think about it from the other people's perspective. Do you want people to know you just because you were there? Or, and say that person doesn't contribute. Sometimes it's better not to be at everything because, we don't want to be the people who just turn up to everything and not have anything to contribute. So think about that a little bit. Also, remembering, especially on VCs and things, people are only seeing a fraction of your personality at work. They don't see the whole of your personality anyway. Imagine how much comes across in a two-dimensional piece. So really focus on what you're actually communicating, and people will miss half the context. Also, be very careful of what you're saying, and I shouldn't really have to, I'm sure you're all aware, but social media is something that's very different from what it was. So be careful. These things get captured, they get communicated. So be careful how, what you're saying. And there's a tip that I tell myself every day. I'm still really bad at it, and you might have noticed from when I first started talking a minute ago to now I've slowed down because I'm now conscious. Talk as slowly as you can. I think actuaries think fast, right? That's what at least I tell myself. That's the reason I do it. Think fast. But if you look at the presidents, the prime ministers of different countries, they speak extraordinarily slowly. You might irritate other actuaries, right? So maybe keep the pace up there. But I think sometimes take into account the tone and the mood, because weirdly, I think there's a thing that you look more professional if you slow down. Thanks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When I work with my US-based stakeholders, they tell us, you Indians speak very fast, probably inspired by Hollywood. We don't speak that fast in our day-to-day life. Yeah, so bang on. Thank you, thanks. Just pivoting into another dimension of remote. Now, imagine a scenario. We are working in office. It's a controlled environment. It's a leased dedicated internet connection with strong firewalls, of course, endpoint compliant hardware. And all the people around us, they are also a part of the organizations held to the ethics and core values. So it's a controlled environment. Now we are working from home and stretching it a bit, working from anywhere. Maybe a cafe, maybe in the airplane or a lounge, or maybe sometimes staycations, where internet may be public. People around us, they may not be very bad, but sometimes there are elements who are looking for opportunities. So now, when we have the flexibility, it means we should know what are the implications when we are working remotely. So, Kalpana, adding into this dimension, our students, they need help. How do they prepare themselves from awareness standpoint when it comes to data security? So the theme of this GCA is data and disruption. So we thought it is important to cover this dimension as well. So how do they make themselves aware and prepare themselves from data security standpoint?
Well, I guess with actuaries, we've always been used to sort of being more careful about data, where it comes from, the integrity of the data, checking it and looking for correlations, for biases. So those things, you know, they should be a good tool we already have, and we've got to amplify it. I think it's being more aware around the transparency and the ethics and how it could be misused. There's so much more data available that it's easier to slip up. So those are the things, but from a personal standpoint, I'm passionate about, you know, the unconscious biases that might be in our data. So if the data has been used with the best, data has been analyzed and assumptions taken with the best of intentions, there's sometimes biases in that data. And I'll give you a sort of very basic example. You know, the hand dryers you use. And I used to wonder, why doesn't it switch on most of the time? You know, I'd fiddle around and it didn't automatically go on, but it hadn't been coded, it hadn't been planned for my skin tone. And that's because the people who coded it weren't thinking about that, you know? So this is where diversity comes to the table. The more diverse you have, the more people involved in that. It's not just data and maths. You have to have it in your experience set, in your thinking. And to be able to see that they've looked at those things makes it a better and more robust piece of work. Thank you.
Yeah, so diversity, unbiasedness, and insecurity around phishing and everything. So some Google stats tell me that there are around 2,200 attacks taking place every day. So it's around 39 seconds, every 39 seconds we are prone to. So this can be said 3,000 or 4,000 or 2,000. So we can, so this is publicly available information. But long story short, we are vulnerable. And as we are working on global clients' data, whether it is policyholders or pensioners, it's critical. And it's critical to have trust in us so that we continue to enjoy the flexibility. So Kendra, pivoting on this, how can we help our students so that they are aware of this and be prepared to work remotely or anywhere as they are enjoying today?
Yeah, so from a purely practical perspective, I mean, all your companies are going to have data security protocols. So make sure you're familiar with them, what you are allowed to do or not allowed to do, what the requirements are. I mean, it may be that you only use their laptop or you have to log in remotely to the system, whatever it is. So it's follow those protocols. And then there's also, I was going to say, don't do stupid . Just don't do silly things. Don't email data to your home address, to your personal email. Don't print something out at home and leave it sitting around for your roommates who may work for competitors to see. I mean, it's just being aware of those kinds of things and issues that might happen when you're not sitting in the office every day.
Thank you. So Avnish.
I have a few practical points to add, actually. I think it's not too different from what you said. But a lot of time as a human psychology, whenever you're thinking about data privacy laws, regulations, you kind of think, okay, it's kind of a mundane area, or I'll follow that, or I'll think about it, or I have to do this compulsory training, I will do that. And unfortunately, although as an actuary, a lot of time the same attitude transfers to ourselves. And there's no running away from it. And probably all the 22,000 attacks that you're talking about, each one of the employees would have gone through those training. So I just presented a completely different picture. Just imagine what is the most secret information or the data that you have. It could be an Aadhaar number for Indians, could be a national insurance number. Just imagine whatever data that you're working at, somewhere there's in bold written there, those specific information. Now just imagine how you will treat that information or data. So effectively what you will see, your behavior towards how you're handling the data would completely change by just inserting one thought in your head that your personal data is there. And it's no different. I mean, whatever data you're working on is a personal data of somebody else. So effectively that will drive you to take any of the trainings which has been conducted by the company seriously. That will drive you to be more cognizant of any action that you're taking, whether it's password setting, whether it's actually transfer of data to somebody external, whether now with the big data coming in, you would like to obfuscate any of the information that you're posting on the cloud effectively to protect the identity of people. Because just imagine if your identity was there, if somebody steals it, how would you feel? I'll just leave with that thought.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for sharing. So can you suggest some of the measures that organizations are, Avnish, this question again to you, that organizations like MNG, how they are preparing their employees to enable them to work in this environment so in terms of awareness about data security. So what are the initiatives that you have taken if it is not classified and good to share? Yeah.
No, I think standard-wise, it's very much similar to what our organization do. We do have these compulsory trainings. We do have anything to do with the privacy laws, understanding of how your password could be hacked, how everything can result in any of the data leaks. But I think one thing which is differentiating that we do have kind of a red team, white team attack session. So effectively, there'll be individuals, and I may not be the happiest individual, I was one of them, are targeted by internal team for a certain phishing email which can lead to a data breach. And they do it very randomly, and if that person, if I'm actually clicking on it and that leak to a data leak, then I need to have a conversation with my manager. So yeah, that keeps me on my toes. And there are different awards which has been given, kind of a gold award, silver award for data security. So I think there's a lot of time which has been invested in ensuring you're educated. And personally, what I feel that has done is change my personal outlook as well. So it's not just about my office data. When I'm actually looking at any SMS which is coming to me or email coming to me, I'm very much cognizant that, okay, oh, I have clicked that email in office and that resulted in data leak. Potentially it could be a very similar email on my personal account. So just makes me a bit more self-aware, I would say.
I can relate so well. I mean, it takes place so commonly. Right. So just shifting the gears here, you can make people aware about the intricacies. What if they are aware, but still they do not comply? The ethics part, right? That's where actuaries, I think we are known for that. But overall, Kalpana, if you can start on the ethics, what are the expectations from actuarial professionals when it comes to ethical stand? Because day in and day out, we are using more and more data, especially in this AI-enabled work where not only structured but unstructured data is also we have access to. So what are the expectations on ethics standpoint?
Okay, well, the IFoA has an actuaries code. So we all have our own ethics, but we have an actuaries code, and that helps you a bit more and guides you with the expectations of the profession. And where that comes from, I think, more is there is an expectation of actuaries to be ethical. And perhaps actuaries are held to a higher bar than some other professions. And I think that's a reputation we want to keep. So it's important for us to sort of encourage other people to be ethical as well, not just us. You know, we're doing our own thing, but we shouldn't be blind to something else happening because that's bringing the whole profession down. And, you know, so that brings a different layer to it. So we've got to be different, that different jurisdictions, we're international profession, right? Different jurisdictions have different laws and there will be different views on ethics. But so we have to be mindful of that as well. Just because you operate somewhere, and because of this hybrid world, you could be operating in one region, breaking an international law. So you sort of need to be more aware of these things than you were before. And that is through communication. We have, take it again, I keep taking my IFoA hat off again, but I sit on the boards of various companies. And each of those companies make me do training again and again and again. I have to do it 4 or 5 times over because I sit on the other companies. It's painful, but, you know, and you have to do it again and again. But it, you know, it's easy with all the other things to do to forget. It keeps putting it front of mind. And you know, and it's those sort of things. It's the repetitive nature of some of the things that are boring, but it just brings it back. It reminds you. It gives you example. People are looking at different ways of doing things. You might have noticed when you get a flight, and there's really exciting videos about how to put your seatbelt on nowadays. And, you know, so we've got to look at things like that and keep people motivated, because some of these things are going to be reminding people how to do things. Thank you.
Thanks, Kalpana. So, Kendra, would you want to weigh in here?
Certainly. So again, your company will probably have a code of conduct, as Kalpana was talking about, and so you need to make sure you understand what that is, and as well as your actuarial association. So the CAS has a code of conduct, IFoA has an actuarial code, similar things. But the most important thing is to remember it applies from the very beginning when you start taking exams. It doesn't kick in when you qualify. You're being held to that standard of behavior from the very, very beginning. So you need to know what it is from when you start taking the exams. And some of it is also just being smart about things. I mean, for example, my husband works for a regulator, of which I sometimes work on companies that were regulated by that regulator. And he works in that room, and I work in that room, and there's a door in between, which is usually open, but the dog also knows how to open it. So when he's having a confidential discussion or I'm having one, we have to make sure we bar and lock the door and shut it so that we can't hear in between. But it's just being aware of what it is around you, again, in your home situation or wherever you happen to be working from. Do you have roommates who work for competitors? Or not even competitors, but just another company that wouldn't be one that you should know about what you're talking about. So maybe put your headphones on. Don't listen to it out in the open. And it's just making sure you have that kind of behavior.
Thank you. Thanks, Kendra. So, Avnish, having heard from professional bodies, what are your views around as an organizational leader?
So I think I just like to turn the problem on its head. So if my team is working remote, what are the 3 or 4 key challenges which I'll see? And potentially, if I'm hiring individuals who are completely remote, never been to office, whether they will be learning well along with the team. Next, whether there will be a sufficient level of trust in them in terms of they're working for the time they're supposed to be working. Second, they are actually having right skill set that they should be working on. And the third part is about the collaboration, whether the collaboration could happen or not. And I feel that things that has worked, and I've experimented multiple things, is just one area where I call it ownership. So if there's a very predefined ownership on individual for a particular area, I do feel there's a lot of time the micromanagement part, honesty, integrity, whether the person is there or delivering, just goes away, because that person knows that, okay, this is a specific piece of work that you need to own, that you need to deliver. So that really helps to address specific, I know we are addressing a couple of areas, one on the security and ability to sort of work independently, but also a lot of time, the big challenges companies are facing, whether they can really trust the output coming from somebody who's working remote. So that ownership part has really tried to address that area, and I'm sure that other pointers which has been mentioned by my colleagues are covering on the security part. But I do feel that if you're working with someone, have that very specific defined ownership, time scale, and give them freedom. Because, I mean, one of the big advantage of people working remote has been that flexibility. They have some childcare issues. There could be some challenges by a certain time period they can work or not. If you start monitoring individuals on how time they're coming in, whether they are doing or not, on not trusting them, it would just erode the whole model itself. And I can confidently say that past 2 years, we've been able to deliver more. And I would say the team has picked up another 40-50% of additional work, because just they're saving so much of time, not commuting every day, and their ability to sort of take the lead and deliver on their own.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing this perspective. So coming to the last prepared question before we go to the Q&A round to Kendra and Kalpana. Maybe Kalpana, to you. So we have spoken about the code that exists in IFoA and CAS ethics. So do you think there should be some kind of an education journey as people, they write exams for fellowship, some some exam or some test on ethics, because we are going to work in this environment more and more. We are going to handle data more and more. Maybe something on formal education in this front.
I mean, we've always handled data. So to a certain extent, we have that. We have professionalism courses. We have videos on it. We talk to each other about it. We have the code. We've talked about all of those things to a great, so we're perhaps ahead of the game in that sort of thing, and people expect it of us. So all of that is a good background for where we are. In this AI world, it becomes even more important. And, ethics is almost subjective to a certain degree. There's certain things we can all agree on, but there will be subjectivity. And in this AI world, we need to figure out what that is. What is okay? What isn't okay? And what standards can be breached and what can't? And what do we do if? And so there's a whole lot of thinking to be done. And that ethics, yes, the profession needs to work on, but I think that has to be sort of in collaboration with society in general. We need to know what we think is going to be good and what's bad. Otherwise, things can get away from us.
Kendra, what are your views on that?
Yeah, certainly. So, like I said, your students are held to the code of conduct from the very beginning, and they will be called upon it if they are seen to breach the code of conduct. So that's sort of already included. CAS has a course on professionalism that's required for an associateship. So everyone goes through that course. It's a multi-day course, and you sit down and you talk to people about different situations, hear from experts about how they dealt with difficult situations. It's really, really useful. But I think the most important thing is to keep that training and keep it up to date, particularly when you've already passed all your exams and you're fully qualified. You still need to keep current with all your professionalism requirements. And that actually helps you become a better actuary. It helps you work on your actuarial judgment to know even better about what is a good judgment and what might be a poor judgment and how you can fix that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so all of us would agree that as we are working remote and in a hybrid environment, I think that flexibility, if you want to really enjoy, we need to be careful, aware, and ethical as we move into future. So that brings me to the Q&A. So any questions from the audience? So please keep your hand raised. Yeah, so a mic there, please. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. Thanks for such wonderful insights on remote working. So as we are talking about the benefits of remote working and the associated globalization of talent, I just wanted to know your thoughts on the related psychological implications as well as the impact on the leadership skills of budding new hires and new actuaries. Thank you.
Avnish, I think it should go to you, being an industry leader, yeah?
Sorry, the second part I got, leadership skill. I think the first part wasn't audible to me. What is the first part?
Psychological impact.
Psychological impact. Okay, so very relevant question, to be fair. And in fact, we've been sort of structuring our teams and conversation considering both in terms of psychological impact of working remote, and given my point about ownership, that does result in a lot of time my team working odd hours, like 2 or 3 a.m. trying to deliver. So we are trying to sort of bring in some level of, I would say, conversation solutioning. What that means is every time we are doing anything, any delivery, we just have certain discussions around what's has gone well, what has gone bad, and we try to incorporate it as part of maybe not a very formal structure of connection, but again, just asking around how are you feeling, how are things going. It has happened with me in my team where one of the individuals has been stretching quite a bit, and that person actually came up to me and said, this is happening. Then I proactively actually went ahead and had a conversation in terms of delivery manager, in terms of what are the right allocation objectives, and basically trying to address those challenges. The second part about the leadership, I do feel is still a bit of a challenge there, and this is something which is a very evolving field. I was reading a couple of articles on HBR, in fact, how do we sort of build a remote leader? And few things which they've been talked about is having that informal connect channel with your team, plus the strategic thinking part, which you can put it down in that conversation, whether that really, put in whole of, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, this is our vision. These are the tools which are available to you. How can you convert these tools, which are more logical way of direction, to more people-centric connect, and effectively, as a leader, let team be having a confidence in you that this is what we've been asked to do and this is how we'll achieve. Because that's your direction. You're not a manager. You'll not be saying ABC. You'll define a vision for them and you'll give them the tool. And if they're able to take those tools, implement them, and be successful, you are successful as a leader.
Great question and a very exhaustive, wonderful answer. Thank you. One last question before we wrap up this session. I'm just keeping a time check. Okay. I can see a red warning as well. Okay. Okay. If no question, thanks everyone for taking time. Thanks. Thank you for being here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hemant and the panelists. Can I please request Dr. K. Sriram to be on stage and give a token of thanks to our panelists and chair.
Thank you very much. We would now be launching the white paper on alternative data sources. Do you all know what are alternative data